From schedules to to-do lists, most of us plan our days by managing our time, and we completely forget about our attention. Today we're talking about the 4 states of attention, what they are, and how you can use them. We live with an impressive amount of distractions. Recent study shows that the average American picks up their phone 344 times a day. That's about once every 4 minutes. Our phones aren't the only source of distractions that we have, of course. We have tons of other external distractions such as emails and a bunch of internal ones, so just random thoughts popping into our head. There are tons of apps out there to help you manage your time, manage your to-dos. However, managing your attention is a bit more complicated. The first step, of course, is to understand the 4 different attention states of your mind. And that's what we're talking about today. So we're going to go over what they are, how you can use them, and how they affect your productivity. The first state is being reactive or distracted. The second one is daydreaming. Third one is being focused or mindful. And the last and final one being in a flow state. So the first state, reactive or distracted. This state is really a superficial state. You're not really focused on anything. Your brain might be scattered over different areas. Maybe you have tons of tabs opened. You're checking your phone every now and then, checking emails. In that state, you're more open to other distractions such as coworkers popping in to ask you questions, emails, like I said. Interestingly, this is actually our most common state at work. We're just not aware of it. We're not really aware of how distracted we are, because the more distracted you are, at some point it becomes kind of like a habit, and then you just get used to it. There was a day that I tried to mark down every single time that I got distracted on a piece of paper, and after like 2 hours, I just stopped. It was too much. I think it'd be interesting though to try that for like, let's say, a week. The big problem with this state, like I said, is that being distracted that much every day, it becomes a habit, and then you just get used to it, and it means that getting focused gets harder and harder. If you spend most of your day in that state, also you'll feel more tired at the end of the day, and you'll feel like you had a really, really busy day, but it won't be really productive. You won't really get your things done, you'll just have a busy day. The next state, daydreaming. Daydreaming is actually pretty interesting. It's super important. During this state, you're not really focused on anything particular. You're trying to see where your mind takes you rather than trying to focus on a specific thing. Daydreaming is actually a restorative state. It's really, really important for your brain. It's where it gathers information and it processes it, and then it moves it into your long-term memory. These moments are typically in-between moments, so like when you're waiting in line, walking to your next meeting, and we used to have a lot more of these, but now we just fill them up with our phones. This state is especially useful if you're trying to solve problems or if you're trying to find new creative ideas. And that's actually why you tend to have a lot of different ideas when you're in the shower. It's one of the only protected daydreaming time that we have in the day. The next step, focused and mindful. That's where you should aim to be. This is where you're focused on new things. You're actively trying to avoid distractions. You're usually in that state when you're doing something thoughtful or creative. It can be something like reading a book or watching your favorite movie, or you could be working on a project that you're really passionate about. You'll be more focused. Other examples are when you're doing an interview for a job. Those times you're usually more focused. The distractions around you aren't affecting you as much. We've actually become worse and worse at doing this over the years, because like I said, we now spend most of our time being reactive and distracted. But thankfully, you can actually practice getting more and more into this state by practicing mindfulness. The next state, flow. Flow is super interesting. You can't really just tap into flow. Your brain kind of gets there on its own. Flow is where you're super laser focused. You don't really have to work at avoiding distractions. They're just not affecting you. You're like laser focused into whatever you're doing. This state is what allows extreme athletes to perform crazy stunts. Like I said, getting into flow is hard, and the reason for that is that you can't really choose to get into flow. It happens when your prefrontal cortex, which is the section of your brain that deals with thinking and other cognitive functions, gets disengaged. So you can't just decide to do that. You have to get into focus, or focus and mindful state if you want, for a long enough time, and then at some point your brain might shift into flow. In this state, your brain is flooded with performance enhancing chemicals such as dopamine and other endorphins. Some of these chemicals increase your focus, some of them increase creativity, or like they'll help you link ideas together. Now that you understand what the 4 states are, the idea is to realize in which one you are at any given moment and which one you actually want to be in. Chances are you're starting from a reactive and distracted state, and let's say you're at work and you want to get into a focused and mindful state. because well, otherwise, like I said earlier, your focus will be scattered and you'll feel really, really busy, but you won't get anything done. But how do you move into a focused and mindful state? The first state is to work on your environment. Think of what's distracting you and try to block it. Some easy way to do that could be just closing your door if you're in a open environment like at work or whatever. You can put headphones on. You could try to think of a system that lets other people know that you're trying to focus, so ask them not to distract you. You could also just close some of the tabs that are open in your computer, like closing your emails, for example. Like you don't need to answer those right away for sure. And the number one tip is to put your phone on Do Not Disturb. I have that set up automatically on my phone. From 9 to 5, my phone gets into like a work mode where I don't get any distracting notifications. The only ones that might pop in are like texts from a certain group of people. And my homepage also changes so that the distracting apps aren't on my homepage anymore. I just have useful apps for work. Thankfully, you can work on helping your mind get into a focused and mindful state by practicing mindfulness. Some ways to do that are meditating, and I'm currently working on a 30-day challenge, which is meditating every day for 30 days. And one of the things that I learned is that meditation isn't really just sitting in an empty room with absolute silence and trying to think of nothing. It's more about acknowledging the different distractions that come in and getting back to focus. And that's really what you want to do when you're trying to get into a focused or mindful state, because you're always going to have distractions and you just need to acknowledge them and then get back to work. So let's say you get an email, instead of opening that email and thinking, responding, all of that, just think, oh, I got an email, and then get back to work. And like I said, daydreaming is also a really important state, and it's a bit harder to get into because you need to be focusing on nothing, but it takes a lot of control to do that, so to avoid distractions like your phone. And nowadays we usually feel bored or unproductive when we're into a daydreaming state, like when you're walking somewhere and you're not doing anything. But you have to change that mindset and understand that it's super important for your brain. Like I said, there aren't any secrets to getting into that state. We always have those moments where we can do that. The secret is just to not get into your phone. Just let your mind wander instead. And now flow. This is a mythical state of focus. Like I said earlier, you can't just tap into flow. You can't just turn off your prefrontal cortex. It doesn't work that way. There are, however, a lot of small things that will make it likelier that you get into flow state. A lot of small changes. The number one thing is, of course, to be focused on the task already. So you have to be in a focused or mindful state. One of the main conditions that researchers have found to get into flow is how hard is the task. If the task is too hard, you'll just get frustrated. But if it's too easy, you'll get bored. So it has to be in that perfect balance. You also need to care about what you're doing, so it has to be something that you're passionate about. And like I said, the secret is just to get into a focused state, and you'll get to flow eventually. Now that you know what the 4 states of attention are, try to think during the day, at what point is it easier to get into different states. Like, I know that after lunch, I'm usually a bit more tired, I have less energy, less focus. So that would be a good time to get into a distracted state and maybe look at emails or read random articles. I know that during the afternoon and later in the evening is where I have most energy and a lot of focus, so it's a good time to get into focus, mindful state, and then maybe into flow. That's something you can really think of when you're trying to plan your day. State has a purpose, and the key is to balance them.